Thank you. Welcome everybody. We're here for the Durango Fire Protection District work session, and we have the City Council with us today. I want to make a short announcement. We're not going to have any public participation. We announced 24 hours earlier, according to SDA regulations, that we're not going to do that. We wanted to respect the City Council. They don't allow that either, so there'll be plenty of time for public comments at one of the City Council meetings or one of our fire board meetings later on. So with that, I'd like to do some introductions. So if we could start with the City Council. Mayor, if you want to do some introductions.
Sure. I'm Kim Baxter. Welcome, everybody. I'm Barb Nosworthy, the Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Melissa Youssef, City Council. Jessica Buell, City Council.
Olivier Boschman, City Council.
Jose Madrigal, City Manager.
Kevin Hall, Managing Director, Community Development.
I'm Scott Shine with the city's Community Development Department.
Welcome. I'm Kathy Morris, the President of the Durango Fire Protection District. Oh,
We have one person without a name tag.
that's right. We tried to get him a second table.
Discomfort, I know. It's fine. I'm Dirk Mills on the city too.
Thank you, Dirk. Kathy Morris, Board President of Durango Fire Protection District.
And I'm Patty Zink. I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Fire District.
Jerry Martinez, Fire Board.
Matt Leader, Board Member.
John Diesendorf, Board Member.
Lyle McKnight, Board Member.
I'm Hal Dowden, Fire Chief. Randy Black, Deputy Chief of Operations. Bud Smith, Legal Counsel from the District.
Okay, thank you for the introductions. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. You see the agenda before you. We're going to stick straight forward with the agenda unless Chief Dowdy, or are there any other formal matters that you do with the City Council that you'd like us to follow for the opening of the work session?
Usually the only question, well, we don't really ask the City Council meeting, so no.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any for you. No. Chair Trust. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and there are no announcements or presentations, Chief. I'm going to move into the business of this work session, and that's a discussion of the new fire station downtown. Chief.
Yep. So thank you all very much for coming today. It's wonderful to see you. Kevin and I were reminiscing about the fact that we've actually sat in this room before and had similar discussions about the same thing, sort of. So it's a great opportunity for us as I've spent the last couple months of my life walking around town trying to talk to everybody that'll hold still long enough about what we've got going on. One of the things that hasn't happened is we haven't had a formal presentation and sharing of what our intentions are, what our ideas are, and things like that with the City Council. And so we reached a benchmark point in our acquisition of the 9R school administration building a few weeks ago. And in the wake of that, we thought it was the right time for us to try to sit down with you and start sharing what our vision is for replacing the downtown fire station in Durango. So my job today is to talk through a little bit and share that vision with you. And then I promise, and Mayor Baxter, if you'll refrain from the applause when I say this, I promise you I will try to be brief. And when I get done with that, I'm going to sit back down and give you guys all the opportunity to talk through this thing.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you, Al.
Yeah. So the Durango Fire Protection District is actually a close relative of the fire department that used to belong to the city of Durango. And the fire department in all years since 1881 had what was an element of the town council and then the city council moving forward. And in 1983, in need of a new fire station to serve the downtown Durango area, the fire department of the city of Durango was placed in what we now refer to, or I suppose has been called River City Hall ever since then. That building was not constructed to be a fire station. It was an electrical warehouse as built, and moderately met the needs of the fire department at that time. And since that time, the fire department has changed drastically. We have a great deal more need for services that are provided out of that station. We have a very diverse workforce. You'll see some of them standing behind you in the back of the room. We've got a lot of female employees. We've got more employees that we have to house at that facility. And so the facility no longer meets the needs of the organization. In fact, I would go as far as saying that that our presence there isn't even appropriate anymore for the diverse workforce and for the spatial needs and the health and safety of the firefighters, the men and women that work there. And so we all know and understand that we've needed to replace the downtown station for quite some time. And as we've moved forward with that process, one of the situations that I feel like existed was that for quite some time, based on work with the city manager and work with previous city councils, it seemed as though the idea was that the city council and the fire district would end up eventually partnering together on maybe a piece of city land that the fire district would then build a fire station on. And as city managers change and staff changes and councils change, what ends up happening is that different ideas come into play. And so we got to the point where the replacement of the downtown station is absolutely our #1 capital improvement priority. It has been sitting #1 on our facilities list ever since we had one, which we created 6 years ago when I got the opportunity to become the fire chief. And so the marching orders I was given when I became the chief, the first one and most important on the list was find a way to replace the downtown fire station. And so I've been working on that since. And to describe it as having been frustrating and challenging would be the understatement of the century. We have gone to extensive lengths to identify properties. We've looked at over 30 properties, either individually or in clusters or groups where we could maybe buy 2 or 3 pieces of property and combine them together. We've explored the opportunities to utilize a finance and investment company to come in and assist us by buying properties, consolidating them, building a fire station to suit, and then renting that or renting to own that across a period of time. We've hired private consultants to help us identify what properties might be available. And all of this fell very much to no avail. We got very close one time. We thought that we were on track, no pun intended, to build a fire station in the railroad parking lot and utilize that 1.5 acres that is owned by the city, was purchased from the railroad by the city at a time when the railroad was financially not doing very well. And we were told by the city manager, I think this is your spot, let's move forward. We need to get to the point where you can show the city council an artist's rendering of what this station may look like, and then we could ask them for approval of this project to move forward. And so the fire district did that. We hired actually 2 architectural firms, a local firm and Reynolds Ash and Associates. And at the time, Dewberry, who was the architect that was working on the city's wastewater treatment. And we felt like by combining those 2 things, Dewberry's services having a great deal of experience through their Chicago office with building municipal and industrial sites, including public service entities, and having a local architect that was on record as having designed some buildings that fit in the downtown area, we thought that we had the dream team established. And what we did was we moved forward through the process, identified adjacency needs, identified all the way down to what size offices go to what kind of people and all that stuff. And we moved forward and we designed a fire station. Now, while that was happening, I got an opportunity to learn a great lesson. And that great lesson was that the public input and the opportunities that you have are going to be possibly clashing with each other. And in that case, by the time that we went through all the process to design a fire station and present that to the city council, the Business Owners Association, the BID group, and some others felt like it was a better location to build, or a better use of that location to build a convention center on that site than it was to build a fire station. Now, they didn't own the site. They didn't have the money to fund a convention center. A lot of them felt strongly that Al Harper should use his money to build a convention center for the town. Al apparently wasn't in on that plan, and that project fell apart, but in laying in the waste was also the opportunity for the fire department to build a fire station there, and that opportunity went away at the same time. And so here we stand a couple of years later with an acre and a half that's still the train parking lot and no downtown fire station. We recognize that one of the things that is clear from our community development folks is that for Durango to keep growing, we're going to need to intensify the density of our downtown area. Right? Am I saying that right? Tell me if I'm using the wrong words, because I've seen the videos and I understand kind of what it is that we're trying for. But as those densities increase, what also increases is the number of people that are in downtown, which means that the call frequency increases. It also means that the property gets more and more valuable, and as it does, there's less and less large lots available. Unfortunately, the vehicles that we have to operate require a great deal of room to be able to maneuver around, to be able to park them in a ready position to be able to respond out, which causes us to need a larger lot than what might seem like a regular city-sized lot. So these are our problems. That's the history, and these are our struggles. If we fast forward then to just a few months ago, we learned that the 9R School Administration Building was available for sale, and that it was going to be sold in public bid, and that there was a process associated with that public bid. And so we did some figuring and talking and worked through some things, and we put together a bid just as 3 other entities did. There were a great deal many more people that were looking at it and either couldn't make their project pencil or didn't get their bids done in time, or whatever the case may be. But in the end, I believe I'm correct in saying that there were 4 bids that came in. And based on a lot of factors, the amount of money that the fire district offered for the property, I'm told by the school board and some of the school staff that the optic of being able to transfer a public service building that was owned by a group, an organization that was headed by an elected board, and be able to transfer that to another group that's operating an organization that's public service oriented and is operated by a publicly elected board was a great optic for them. And they really liked the idea. And so we moved forward through that process. They had several hearings. And through that process, the fire district was selected as the successful bidders on that property. And so we worked then, initially we signed into a letter of intent with the school district. And that was followed by signing a contract for the purchase agreement for the property. That has been done. That's sitting at the title company ready to go, and our earnest money has been paid to the title company to hold in trust. And so that's our current status with the purchase of the 9R School Administration Building. It's my belief that that purchase is going to go through. Hanging in the balance and holding up that process is the subdivision process for subdividing off Buckley Park, which is 1.44 acres that used to be contiguous with the property that we're buying. And that's being subdivided off so that that can be transferred to the city so it can remain a park for years to come. And that's where we stand currently. What we hope to do this evening or this afternoon is to have the opportunity to speak forward with you about what we think our plans are. These plans are not complete by any means. They are constantly changing and in development as we move forward. But I can tell you that we have not been able to find another suitable site. Even as we move forward with trying to identify suitable places where people were willing to sell the property, places where we had enough room to be able to get the fire trucks in, and this has been the one that we found and that we've been able to purchase. So that's what we've done. Now, what does that look like for the future? Well, on the front of the brochure that each of you has on your desk, it shows an overhead map on the front page. And so we're basically looking at moving 2 blocks away from our current location at River City Hall. We're 1,001 feet according to Chief Krupa's expert GPS skills. And so one of the issues that comes up is that, well, why don't you stay at the River City Hall site? And I think that's a great question. In fact, I was going down that road for quite some time. I was in negotiations with the former city manager, working on a plan to be able to purchase that site from the city and move forward. We've even had some contingencies worked out. There was a problem because in the other half of that building are our community development folks, and they needed somewhere to go as well in order to vacate the building. And so I had proposed that we would get an appraisal on the building, that we would pay half of the money up front so that the city would have enough money to be able to do a remodel project on Carnegie. And then the staff could be moved from River City Hall to Carnegie. We would pay the balance of that, own the building, tear it down, and rebuild a modern fire station. And as we moved along, obviously things change as we go through time, right? Now we have a new city manager. We have principally a new council. And that doesn't seem to be an opportunity that we have any longer. I'm not in disagreement at all when I hear people say that, hey, there's a higher and better use for the River City Hall site, right? It's a beautiful lot. It's got river frontage, great access to the bike and walking trails. There is great access to Camino del Rio. There's some problems that we know about with the site as well, but what we've learned is that we're not going to find the perfect site. And so we were still interested in that. And so we moved forward with trying to continue that. I had opportunity to speak with several city councilors along the way, and it became clear that that wasn't the vision that the city seemed to have for the future use of the River City Hall property. And so we crossed that one off our list as well. And so as we've tried to move forward, we've investigated opportunities as they come up. But when the current proposition made itself available to us, and then we were successful in that, we were so excited. I mean, we've been 6 years trying to get somebody to say yes to us, and finally somebody did. And so we jumped out and we bought this site. I've had some discussions with many of you about, well, what was the strategy with not including the city council in this decision? And the truth of the matter is that when you're doing a real estate deal and you're negotiating things and you're trying to be the top bidder, you can't afford to have the word be public. So for quite some time during the bid process, the fire district asked, and were obliged to a great extent, I think, with the realtor's office and the school, that it not be made public that we were one of the bidders. And I think that potentially that may have caused some distrust from the public, because all of a sudden there's a secret bidder out there, which made people very uncomfortable. But we didn't have the opportunity to be able to talk that through with people, because the minute that you start talking about it, people start developing opinions one way or the other, and you can't make a real estate deal that way, especially not a competitive real estate deal. And so we made a decision, and when I say we, myself and my deputy chief and our board president, that we're going to do this and move forward with trying to get this done, bring our board in on board, but not make it public until we had some result from that. And so if it feels as though this conversation is long overdue, we feel like it is as well. We would much rather be partnering with you in a manner where we're forthcoming with what's going on, and we're telling you guys our every plan as we move forward. We're excited about the fact that Mayor Baxter has offered the opportunity for our board and you to start meeting more often, because I think that communication is needed. We are not a department of the city, but we surely are the city's fire department. And we view our role as that, and we view a relationship with you as that. So that's where we're going. Now, what does it look like moving forward for us to have a fire station on 12th Street at 2nd Ave? Well, we think that we have a grand opportunity to do some really cool stuff in that neighborhood. we believe that one of the contingencies of the sale is that the outside of the historic building has to stay as is. The look of the building, the exterior structure has to stay as is. And we believe that in order to suit our current needs, because as we've gone through the building and looked at it and discovered things, the plumbing needs to be fully upgraded, the electric needs to be fully upgraded, technology feeds need to be fully upgraded. It needs a full remodel on the inside to be an effective, modern office building, fire station, whatever, however we move forward with that. And so our plan is to do all those things. We also will obviously need a place to put our fire apparatus and our ambulances. And so next to the historic building is the old Big Picture School building, which is also affectionately known to some of the people that went to school. There's, I think, Arts and Science building. It was built in the 1960s. And we believe that the front of that has some structural issues, and we would replace the front of that building with a drive-through apparatus bay that would be big enough to house our fire apparatus and our ambulances that we need to stay there. And so as you look at that property then, you would be viewing the historic building, and to its right next to that, we would have an apparatus bay building. Affectionately calling that bay building the carriage house, because it's important to me that we not only don't diminish the look of the neighborhood, but we enhance the look of the neighborhood. And so we think that we can build a carriage house style building with the same sort of jack arched openings for the apparatus bays and vertically opening doors so that it looks period appropriate for the time. Remember in 1916, we're just getting out of the era where everything was horse-drawn. And so at the time that that school was built, that would have been what a new fire station that had that would look like. And we think that that's a grand opportunity for us to be able to do something that's going to have character and look awesome and really match up to the character of the historic building, and at the same time enhance the beauty of the neighborhood. And I know we've got a lot of folks here that live in the neighborhood, and they're concerned about that. So moving forward, that's what our plan is. Now, I can tell you that in our process, we didn't want to put the cart before the horse, again, no pun intended. And so we've only just now hired our architect on and contracted with him to start doing our site plan. And we're moving forward in a calculated manner so that we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. We're aware that we are very likely going to have to go through a major development plan with the process to get through city planning. And so we're looking forward to what that might look like. We've already preemptively met with CDOT. We've got a name in mind for a consultant to do a traffic study for us. We believe that we are in good shape with all of the survey type stuff. The school district actually had now a survey done on the whole property. Now it's being done just on Buckley Park so that that can be subdivided. And so we're very, very early on in the process. I can't even tell you for sure that my vision of how the site's going to be laid out is the correct one for right now. But what I do promise you is that as we have the opportunity to move forward and that plan develops, we very much want to share that with our public, who we serve, who live in that neighborhood. We want to share it with you, our partners, so that you know what it is that you're getting. There's another thing that we want to share, and this is really important to us. Some of the shrewd folks in this audience even have asked me about it. Why do you need 44,000 square feet? Isn't that building too big for you? And absolutely it is, if we're moving into it by ourselves. And so the real point that I wanted to bring to you this evening is to introduce an idea that I think would be wonderful for the community. It's an opportunity that we have to solve many problems this community has, and at the same time, benefit the city, benefit the citizens, benefit the fire district in the way that we all move forward. So that opportunity looks like this. When we were examining the building, it became clear to us that there's a great deal more space than we probably needed just for the fire department operation. And through that process, we also realized that going to a multi-use facility where you have retail shops maybe or residential opportunities there doesn't work well for fire departments nor police departments. And yeah, we have a fire department that desperately needs a new home in downtown. We have a police department that your facility study says desperately needs a new home in downtown. And so the opportunity for us to partner on this effort, to share in the project and to put the fire department and the police department together under one roof and truly create an emergency service center to serve this community for years to come is what it is that we called you here today to talk about. It's the idea that we've been wanting to talk with you about. We think that there are wonderful economies of scale associated with this plan, and we think that moving forward, we can all benefit from that. Now, there are, as I said, 1,000 things to consider when we start talking about this. And so some of the highlights that I know are on the tips of your tongues and at the front of your mind are, well, how does your presence there affect the urban renewal area? And I would love to know more details about that myself because I don't understand nearly enough yet about the URA. But I think this, my understanding from talking with many of you is that the urban renewal area for the city provides an opportunity to relieve a developer of taxation during the renewal period and to be able to borrow against future taxation so that you can develop infrastructure to support the new structure, the new buildings that come up. And I would suggest to you that it's impossible, and as far as I know, to calculate what that value might be of what the city could borrow against this if it were going to be something else. But I do know that because it's exempt, you wouldn't be able to do that if it were a fire station. But what you could do is you could move your fire department and your police department into that building and hold it as exempt, and then take an action where River City Hall, currently exempt, could become saleable. I understand that it just appraised for over $4 million, right? You could sell that as an asset, and instead of borrowing money, get a lump of cash for that could go towards city's capital needs. In a similar fashion, if we had the police department living with us at our new facility, you could sell the police department. My understanding is because it's a corner lot on 2nd and the size of the lot, it's liable to appraise for $3 million or more. You sell that and you've got that cash that you can fund your capital plan with. And what I would suggest to you is that rather than looking at this move as the opportunity to mess up the plan for the URA, what if we think dynamically a little bit and we say, okay, we're going to take this cash money that we have the availability to get from cohabitating these agencies, and we dedicate some of that money to replace the URA money that we would have used or we would have borrowed in order to build the infrastructure that's needed in the area. Now, again, I'm certain, I'm a fire chief. I'm not a planner. I'm not a community development guy. I don't know, but it seems to me there's some opportunities we can twist out of this. The other things that I think that this would do is it would open the door for us to be able to incorporate some other things that are critically needed in our community. One of the things that I think the first opportunity that I actually had to meet with Commissioner, City Councilman Baxter and Noseworthy, we sat and we talked about the confusion with trying to get a building permit in this town. And especially in an area where you're dealing with city and county overlap, right? You're building in the county, but it's close enough to the city that it has to meet the city's codes, but the city and the county codes don't work together. And God knows if it's in the county, the fire codes don't match up with those things either. And so part of my vision is to twist as many economies of scale out of this project as we can. And one of the things I think we could do along that note is we could take and provide office space for a city planner, a county planner, and a fire department, fire marshal's office representative, so that certain times during the week, a developer could come in, somebody that owns property that's trying to build a house that has to meet all those requirements, could have the opportunity to meet with all three entities at the same time so that all three entities can get on the same page and give those people one set of instructions for what they need to do to build what they want to build. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it's desperately needed in our community. I know that the Economic Development Alliance has done a ton of work on trying to solve that problem. And I think that we've got the opportunity to help solve it with this facility. The other thing that I know that we need desperately in this community is we need an overflow for our dispatch center. I participate as a member of the Executive Management Committee, and the dispatch center desperately needs a place where they have the ability to flip a switch and have 911 calls go somewhere different. If there's a terrorist act, a landslide, a wildfire, if there's a gas leak, if the building blows up, burns down, gets flooded, we've got to be able to still dispatch emergency calls. And I think that we've got space and we've got the technology feeds that would be needed in order to support having an overflow dispatch center. 2 consoles is what our new dispatch director tells me that we would need, and we could have that in the same facility. So truly incorporating the opportunity to create community service environment here and to be the emergency service center for the future of our community. I recognize that I'm springing this on you and that there's an awful lot of work and discussion and things that would have to go on in order to make this happen. And so, quite obviously, I'm not looking for any sort of direction or an answer tonight. I know that you guys can't even provide that, but I wanted the opportunity to be able to give this opportunity to you. Wanted to put it in your hands and have you have the opportunity to see the potential for benefits from this and to really be able to work forward and to solve your facility problems that you've got with both your police department and your fire department, some of your capital needs with the sale of some assets that you may be able to divest yourself of, support of a new downtown fire station, a new downtown police station, and the opportunity for us to take a building that served since 1916 to assure that the children of Durango would be educated and turn that into a guarantee for 100 years to come that fire, police, and ambulance will have a presence in downtown Durango. My organization has had a proud history. We've been in downtown Durango since 1881, and we're fighting to get to stay there. That's our presentation. I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Chief. As you can tell, our chief dreams big, and so do we as a board. We support our membership 100%. We appreciate everything they do. And so it's a work session for us to talk with you about these ideas. And they are ideas. And we hope that you can grasp onto them and share with us some of your thoughts as well. I'd like our board, if they have any comments, to feel free to do so right now, and then open it up for your council member. That's okay. Do you have any comments? Any statements?
I think one thing that I'd like to further a little more that Hal briefly touched on, there's been some comment in the public that we've kind of worked behind the scenes, and that is true, but we've worked behind the scenes because everything, I've sat on this board for going on 9 years, and we worked behind the scenes because past city council boards you guys get pulled in so many directions, and that's got to be super tough. We have one singular focus as a board here, and in the past we've seen that you guys get pulled down rabbit holes from residents within the city, and we felt like we were best to try to move forward with this thing and then bring you guys along as partners. We feel like it's a great fit. We know how desperately the police department needs to be moved. If anybody's been in there, I haven't been in a jail cell in quite a few years, but if anybody's been in there, it's a rough building. So we feel like it's a golden fit, at least an opportunity for it. And I just wanted to make sure that this present city council understood, there was no background antics going on. We were just trying to make sure that we could move forward with something that we felt like was a great fit.
And I would just say the other thing that the chief didn't mention today, but has talked to us about in the community, I know, is we need to be between the Animas River and 3rd Avenue and College and 14th.
Yeah.
Because that's where the calls come in from. And seconds means life or death for people. So after 4 minutes, if your emergency folks aren't there, it could have a bad outcome. And We don't want that. You don't want that. And our members don't want that. So a lot of people have said, well, why do you have to be downtown? That's the reason, to save lives.
I was going to say one other point. It's come up a lot of times when you talk to people. What's the city's contribution? And so the city pays 28% of our budget, but receives 66% of our service. So 66% of our calls are strictly to the city. And I think we serve the city well. I feel like, and I don't feel like we've ever complained about that, but I think it's important to know that that's how much of our calls go to just the city of Durango, so.
Our relationship is super important with you guys, so we want to continue to do that. And I think there's not enough of us doing that in these elected positions. And so from my perspective, I just really want to see this relationship grow in whichever way we can, in a productive way for our community. Mayor?
I have several things I'd like to discuss, but I'd like to give the other city councilors an opportunity if they have a comment to make.
I have a question for the chief.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for your service and your efforts, and also to the district and to the folks who serve us by putting their lives on the line. Thank you. I think that we all recognize the importance to any community. I think the idea of a shared space with the police department is intriguing. In fact, when I was a candidate, I asked, why wasn't the city looking at sharing space with the county, the sheriff's office at the time? So I do think that's intriguing. I guess the question for me, Hal, would be, going back to that site, you know, and I'm looking at the city attorney, because I know there are issues with the city-owned property of that you had looked at. And I know that the train has right of first refusal under very generous conditions. But could you envision a shared space with the police department on that space? And if that were available, because we haven't talked with this council, is that something that could work for you?
It's a great question. And we talked about the opportunity many times through the progress of trying to find space. And I don't want to go through 30 different properties, but to give you an idea of kind of the highlight list a little bit, some of the most promising sites that we looked at were, we looked at the Commons building and what the opportunities were there. We had gotten tipped by our consultant that may very well be something they would consider selling, because it had such a big space next to it with the parking lot, and then behind Albertsons there's actually more room for a semi-truck turnaround. And we thought that maybe on that site there might be enough room for us to share space with the police department. At the River City Hall site, we considered what it might look like to go up higher to be able to give them enough room. But unfortunately, what we end up with, unless we took over some of the parkland, which I know is like suggesting, death to typical Durango voters, we wouldn't have enough surface space to be able to park the police there. We even thought about maybe going down a level, but it's in the 100-year floodplain, and going down is a problem. We looked at the site, quite frankly, when most recently when the Dual Hotel on the other end of 2nd Avenue, across from Gazpacho's project, seemed to get stalled. What might it look like there? To have 2 levels of parking, run the fire trucks out of the bottom, park the police cars on the level above that, have 2 or 3 floors of office space there. I think that while I get it about the tendency to want to do mixed-use properties, it's really enticing to developers. Like Charles and John are here. God knows that's a mixed space, right, that they're operating. And I see the brilliance in that. But when you have issues like my workers have to stay overnight 24 hours a day, I've got narcotics that we have to keep secure and away from people. I've got fire trucks that freeze if they get cold at night. And similarly with our police department, with the ability to privately bring in someone who's arrested to look down or to question a suspect in something. We have such similar security needs that the golden opportunity is to put all of us that don't fit with anybody else together to gain the economies of scale that you're trying to gain through a mixed-use venture. And so I think that if you're asking me, is there enough room on the 1.5 acres of training parking lot to put the fire department and the police department? The answer is no. And it's unfortunate because we really see the benefit of being housed with them. What we found when we designed that building is that we would have to cut a deal with the railroad to have shared parking spaces in order to gain the amount of parking spaces that we needed to meet the city code standards for how many parking spaces you needed for how much square footage of building that you have. And for us, it's garage doors, interestingly enough. The thing that drives our need for parking spaces is how many garage doors we have. So we can't do it on that site. River City Hall, it would be a stretch to be able to do that, although potentially the way that you design it, you could maybe figure out a way to make something work. 14th and Main, where AutoZone is, was property that we looked really hard at. We felt like from an access standpoint, that was the best site that we looked at. But at the same time, it's sold by some folks that have it in a trust and they don't want to sell. And there's long-term leases that are on the corporate ventures that are in there. It's got AutoZone, it's got one of the pizza establishments and Jimmy John's, and those corporate ventures do long-term leases when they move in. And so there'll be a long time gap between the time we could acquire and the time that we could actually move people on and start doing work. We look at.
Do you mind if I let other city councilors have a question or make a comment?
Sure. We're good, you've answered my question.
Yeah.
Well, I was interested in hearing some of what you were saying about what you were looking at, because that is the issue, I think, for so many people in the community. But first of all, I just want to thank all of you, the board, and your leadership, Hal, and your team. Having served for 5 years now on city council, I've been in this room several times, and often heard you're kind of pleased for support and to get you and your organization to a point where you can provide service for the community that you felt that you needed to do. And so I really want to thank you for your leadership over the years. I think we're very fortunate to have you in this community, and safety is, the most important thing for all of us. So I want to thank you for that to start. Couple questions that I have is, whenever we go through processes like this, it's so difficult for the community to get their head around change. They want to have a voice and they want to have a say. And so much of what we've learned along the way with our processes is that just carefully thought out public processes to engage the community is significantly helpful. As a result of what you had to do to get to where you are today, some of those have been shortened or abbreviated, and potentially that's what's causing some of the concern for the community. Their questions they haven't had the opportunity to have their questions answered. They don't understand why not these other properties. They know that you've looked at them, but why not? And can we go back? And why not then? And they don't understand things about noise and impacts to neighborhoods and where are you going to park all those cars. So a lot of questions, and I guess my question to you is, can we have more processes around public engagement so that we together, and if we could even support you in that, especially if we are able to have more discussions about a partnership, which I think would be wonderful. Just as one counselor, we have not had those public conversations, but it makes a lot of sense to have emergency services in one location downtown. So I just wonder if we could have more processes around that, and vet some of these community questions. And also, my other question was if there's more opportunity to consider the use of community spaces within the building. I've heard you talk about a boardroom potentially in the past. Just I want to talk about if there's a way to incorporate, people are saying potentially that's not the highest best use of that property. If there's extra space, what can we do to incorporate some of the community's vision for bringing some of that back?
Yeah, those are all great questions, and I'll try to be very brief. I am fighting and clawing in our community right now to try to get the opportunity to speak with people. And so some of the examples of that I spoke with a group of former mayors yesterday. They were gracious enough to, and some of those folks are here today. I got the opportunity to speak to the bid board. They graciously provided me some time. I got the opportunity to speak with both the board of the Boulevard Neighborhood Association, at which my sellout deputy chief, ate peach cobbler, and watched me talk the whole time. We got the opportunity to do that, and then through that opportunity, we coordinated a neighborhood meeting where I spoke with many of the residents. Some of you are here tonight from 3rd Avenue at Mason Park on that. I am scheduled for Eggs and Issues in September. I have been scheduled for a couple of other things that ended up getting moved around. I think September I'm going to get the chance to get to Economic Development Alliance and speak again. I want the opportunity to engage the community. Now, here's the tough part for us. We have moved forward to the point where we're contractually obligated in the choice that we've made. And we don't have the opportunity to go backwards. And I don't want to provide the opportunity to seem like we're throwing out an opportunity for our community to somehow have an a la carte opportunity at picking menu options for what their fire station might be or where it might be or things like that. But I absolutely want engagement for what we're going to do, what it's going to look like, what kinds of things we're going to bring in. And I share some of the same vision it sounds like you have. It'd be a crime, it seems to me, to do away with that grand space in the 9R building that's the big auditorium. Both Chief Brammer and I need a space like that where we can brief our troops when we've got something big going on, brief the community when there's a significant emergency going on, have conference-style lecturers come in to educate our police and our fire department. I extended in our contract the opportunity for the school board to continue using that space. All they've got to do is call me and schedule it with me. They can use it free of charge. And I would love to have other community events that come there. Remember, I've told you all before, my vision for the fire department is really to return the fire station to being the cornerstone of the community that it sits in. I want our community to be comfortable coming there. Some of my fondest memories as a kid were visiting fire stations. And so for me, there's a real attachment to the same kind of thing that you're talking about.
Thank you. I think I want to start, well, thank you for presenting in that. That was great. I think the most important thing for me is that working together component that you talked about. And I want to make sure that you know that I want a good relationship between City Council and the fire department. And actually Mayor Pro Tem Northworthy and I had a meeting earlier today where we were kind of talking about that, like there's some key people in our community that I think the city should have great relationships with. And I think the stronger the relationships are, the more we'll get done and the more productive we'll be. And we were talking about other entities, but this is one of the biggest in my mind. And I hope that all of us can really realize that and make sure that we're just moving forward as best as we can. I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect and it's your dream that you just laid out so beautifully is going to come to fruition, but I'm saying that I hope we all just have the best intentions and come together and work together well. A few points that I'd like to make. I have actually two of my best friends are female firefighters that work for you, and I know about the issues that are there in that downtown fire station from them. And so it is important that I think we help you solve that. I don't think that, you've been there a long time and clearly other things are more important in us getting this done. And so I think it is important that we get it done in a way that works best for everybody. We are pulled in a lot of directions. Again, we talked about this earlier today with people coming at city council with emails about this, about the tree on 32nd, about, I mean, there's been some big ones that we get pulled in lots of directions about and we have to answer to. You know, I see community members here that have sent us emails with concerns about the fire department. There will be concerns in my mind no matter where we put this, especially if it's in between, right, the Animas, Third, College, like someone's gonna have an issue with it. I remember I worked for a construction company that was working on giving bids and stuff for the big convention center down there. And I remember the uproar when the fire station was gonna go down there. People hated it. And so at some point we're dealing with people, emails and people hating this wherever it's gonna go, I think. And so that's, I guess, our job. I don't know. I think every location, like I said, in terms of URA, I know Scott can probably speak to this better, but in my mind, you know, we, you know, have kind of a breakdown of what our best guess is that we would be losing. But we would, you know, you talked about that AutoZone area. We would lose a lot of money there if that turned into a private and it wasn't public. And so anywhere that this goes, we're not necessarily losing money because right now it's staying there. The potential of it, from the breakdown I saw, was potentially $11,000 a year that we would lose over the 25 years. And in my mind, for the services you provide, and that wasn't even taking into account the police station, like that's not, I don't know. For me, it's like, it could be worth it to have a facility. I think there's great potential with the service center idea, where you can share a gym with the police department, you can share a conference room, you can share, like financially, it could make a lot of sense. Does it? I have no idea. And you know, I'm also like not a fire chief. You have to tell us where it needs to go and where it can work. Like, you know, does it fit with a police station here or there or here? You know, maybe this is the spot. And then we just have to do our due diligence and best to make the community feel comfortable and confident about it. And I think it is our job to help them feel comfortable and confident about it with yours. Like, I don't think it's fair of us to be like, oh, it's a 9R into fire district job. Like, you guys have fun with the community. Like, that's not fair either. And so we need to make sure that we're also, you know, helping you as best as we can. So I had no questions, but I just went on a rant. Go ahead.
Maybe you want to go first, Mayor, because I tend to have a lot more questions, so maybe you take the opportunity.
Oh, anybody else?
You sure? Thank you for the presentation, for the efforts. I want to ask a couple of questions from our community that I think tie into this. If you allow me. First, and I'm going to just ask some pointed questions. Sure. So, if you look at the cost of this development, would that be similar if you would be looking at other property, more or less, or the same order of magnitude? You know, people was concerned about spending taxpayers' money through the city. Is that just of your opinion going to the other projects?
Yep. So to give you an example of what we think we're looking at and where we think we'll be, the acquisition price for this property was exactly the same as what was cast forward to us to do the Commons building. There was not ever a price cast for us for the 14th and Main property. It is less expensive than the cost would have been for the VFW / wine merchant / muffler shop. And we know that there is a significant factor that is, until you do it, you don't know exactly what you're looking at, with asbestos and lead paint abatement and things like that. The school district has done extensive investigation into that with consulting. I've got a 180-page report that we reviewed yesterday with one of the development folks in town to talk about what those costs might look like. We believe that we're probably looking at the opportunity to spend on this project in total a factor of between $14 and $17 million. That includes the acquisition price, the remodel of the areas that we would need to remodel in the historic building, and the removal of and replacement with the apparatus bay carriage house building next to it. And those are rough numbers that are established through our architect that is working on the site plan now, giving us dollars per square foot and asking us what programming it is that we're trying to fit. My understanding also, to put that in perspective, is when we designed the building to go onto the railroad parking lot site, where we didn't have a building to remove, we ended up thinking that we were budgeting for a $12 million project, and really it looked like more like $14 or $15 million to be there. So I would say to you with some degree of confidence that I think that the cost of this project is similar to what the cost of another project would be. What I can tell you is that the economies of scale associated with the size of this project and being able to move both the police department and the fire department in there is that we have the opportunity for the economies associated with sharing those costs. And so where I would be looking to move the fire department there at maybe a cost of $14 to $17 million, we may very well be able to do that whole project for $14 to $17 million, and the city pay for the police department portion of that, and the fire department pay for the fire department portion of that, saving us both a great deal of money. In your facilities study that was done, my understanding is that the projection was $19 million to replace your police department. That's a huge number. And for about half of that number or less, we could replace the police department for you and, oh, by the way, have a downtown fire station and serve the community from that. So one of the really golden opportunities I think we have here is the economies of scale that could benefit us both.
I think that's a very good answer. That's one of them. The next one I have is, I looked at that area in a little bit more detail. The zone that you have to be in that whole range from 14th to 3rd Avenue to the river, Camino, you will always have residents pretty much nearby. If you're close to the river, that's a prime area for development. You might not have residents now, but you will have a lot of residents in the future. And if I look, I'll just go around the clock on that property, because I just did it. You have going direct neighborhoods, Buckley Park, then you have an office and thrift store, you have a Carnegie building, you have a church. And then if you go up 3rd Avenue, you have, I think, 2 residences, the bigger houses, and a mortuary. And then you go around, you have the Smiley building, and then you have on the north side some businesses such as the Handcrafted House and During Recycling. So the direct facilities is actually low in residential housing. And does it seem that you would ever have an opportunity to have a property that has limited residential housing right around it in this area that you have to be?
So what I can tell you is, and I think you said that you were going to ask me pointing questions, and I'd like you to point just a little bit more. Are you asking me, do I see the opportunity to develop residential property into this project?
No.
Or are you asking me if residences moved around that, would that be okay?
Now, what I'm saying is this: if I take a step back, 6 years when you look at all these properties, you have always an impact on the direct neighborhood. And if I look at the region that you look at for your station, I cannot come up with many places where you will not be right next to residences. So if I look at this and going around to the properties, I only see two residences directly adjacent.
There are more.
Is that correct?
There are many more.
Yeah, okay, directly adjacent. Yeah, I'm saying directly adjacent. Obviously, there will be, if you go further out, there's a lot. But you will have the same situation in any location that you have, unless you're ahead of the game and residents get there. That was my question.
So I think sometimes more and sometimes less. I can tell you that the funny thing about fire stations is we got to build them where the people are. I mean, we can't serve the people unless we're where they are, and that means where they live and where they work and shop and play. And we, an example that I'd like to point you toward, because I think this is a really good one, is that we met with some of the same community concerns about noise and what does it look like having a fire station near where I live and things like that when we did our project at Station 3, which is on 32nd Street extended. So if you turn going out toward the county, and it's actually, the address is County Road 252. So right in the neighborhood where Brad is. And some of our closest neighbors there are a psychological services company who specifically counsels folks with post-traumatic stress disorders associated with being veterans and having been in war-torn countries and things like that. They were greatly concerned when we were going to do a construction project there and have nail guns going off and this and that and the other things. So they spoke with us pretty directly. Also adjacent to that, our nearest neighbor is an assisted living facility and rent-controlled apartment complex in the Lumiere Apartments. And so we have not just close by residential properties, but residential properties that are 3 stories tall and have elderly folks in them, or folks that are needing to be cared for. So really significant possibility for disturbing people there. And we get Christmas cards from those people telling us how wonderful it is to be our neighbors. You know, the concerns that they had on the initial jump at this thing have turned out not to be problems for them at all. We have several opportunities to be able to help be quiet. And the TV shows do us a significant disservice because the door opens and the siren and lights come on and we leave in a blaze of glory. But that's not how these men and women actually operate those things. We use the lights and sirens in order to signal to the public that we're asking for the right of way because we've got an emergency to go to. We don't do that directly out of our door. We don't do that just as a matter of course. We have a nationally based system that is used at the dispatch center in order to determine whether the life threat associated with the call is significant enough to need to run code. And in most cases, it recommends that we run non-code or without lights and sirens on. So that gives us an opportunity. More than 66% of the time we're responding to calls, we are not running our lights and sirens. The other opportunity that we've got is we've got equipment that's already installed on all of our emergency apparatus, which is called traffic preemption equipment. The technology flashes a light that's invisible to the eye, but the sending and receiving units pick each other up. We have the ability to change the traffic lights all through town so that they change to being in our favor. And what that does is it stalls the traffic opposing us from the sides, stops the traffic that's opposing us from the front, and allows the traffic that's in line with us to keep moving through the intersection. We've just arrived at a new deal with CDOT last week, not yesterday, allowing us to utilize that more often than we had ever been allowed to utilize that before, so that we can benefit from that. What that means for the citizen is that you aren't going to hear lights and sirens as often. And as I've had the opportunity to speak with the folks that live in that neighborhood, they say, well, am I going to hear sirens? Well, you hear sirens right now, right? We're 2 blocks away. If you hear sirens where you are, you may continue to hear sirens, but we're going to do everything that we can to be good neighbors and not to disrupt you.
I have a couple more. So, on your areas of impact, the number of calls you receive in that zone. So when I think about Bucket Park, I always think about events. Is that a high impact area or a high call area, or is it just spread out evenly through the whole zone?
So the downtown area that we look at, would you mind going to my office and grabbing the chat? The downtown area that we look at is we can tell how many calls happen specifically in that area based on the way that we assign units to go to it. So if the units that get recommended to go there, Engine 2, Medic 2, that's the downtown area that we're doing. The heat map was designed off actually using Esri and actually mapping the GIS location of every single call. We had 6,000 across each year is what our number is now. And so they seem to be pretty evenly distributed, really focused on the area of Maine and Camino, and second to a certain extent, mostly just turned up and going towards south. But as you look at the heat map, you'll see it.
You're really talking his language now, man.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
So as you look at the heat map, you're going to notice three very distinctive areas. The area of downtown, you can see is a hot area all through that downtown core, with a focus on the area between Olive and 12th, and the Camino area that is adjacent to that. The other hot areas that you see to the top and the left is a nursing home, and the sun over there on the bottom right is the hospital. And the reason that shows so much is that all the transports we get out of the hospital show that is the incident location.
I think you answered the question earlier. It's pretty consistent throughout the whole college up to 12. We hear a regular talk about the URA and a loss of URA funding, TIF, and I think you explained it very well. TIF is a funding where you take out a mortgage where you don't have the house yet. So you're able to spend on infrastructure and facilities and things in anticipation of the future. And I think, Scott, thank you. I think you sent that something, the comparison out of it. I think there's a mistake in it or something I misunderstood, but there's one. You don't have to follow up. There was a comparison done between City Hall development and 9R building. And if one number is correct, it's pretty much similar. The loss of revenue, if you call it revenue. And I think, so on the URA and development area from the Camino, the whole area, it appears that the TIF funding would be similar, if not, if you do the police station integration as an option, we would have a lot more funding available. And that would be something that I expect some people to disagree with, and I think that's a very good topic for a discussion, but this is my perspective. I think I voiced the same as Melissa and Jessica said, that it's teamwork, working together and supporting you guys. I think it's extremely important that we work together towards the next steps. I think what you mentioned, there are great opportunities. The police station you mentioned, the dispatch. I certainly would like to hear more about it. It's visionary in a way, and I think that's also very positive. Hopefully, you're able to present a lot more detail to the community. I think, ideally we get more support, but I think community involvement is super important. And that was maybe a little problematic in the early stages. I feel for you for having gone through this for the last 6 years and not being able to proceed as fast as you would have liked. And with that said, I just look forward to hearing more, and also from our community, if there is any support or more resistance, and how we can help moving forward in whatever direction it is.
So first, I kind of wanted to, given Scott's projection here, I did want to mention that the loss of the 9R building, in the sense of it not being a private entity versus being a public, over the time of the URA, which is 25 years, is actually $4.3 million, which is $173,000 a year. So I just wanted to make it pretty clear that it is a significant amount of money that going from public to private would give us.
But to be clear, I was making the comparison for River City Hall.
I understand.
Okay, but I want to make sure I was.
Yeah, and so the River City Hall is $4 million. And the idea behind the URA, the vision, was that both those properties would go from public to private, so that there would be $8.4 million over the 25-year life of the URA contributed. So with this property remaining public, it's a possible loss of over $4 million to the development of the URA. So I just wanted to make that clear. I also wanted to say that in the last 2.5 years since I've been on council, how you've not come to us with any presentations or ideas about where you might like to put the building. And I wanted to make that clear because in some of the articles and at the neighborhood association meeting, it sounded like you had been talking with us all, as well as staff, regularly to try to figure these things out. And in the 2.5 years that I've been there, that has not occurred. So I wanted to point that out and make that clear. Also, we have considered many, many different things with our facilities. The Carnegie Building, the River City Hall, the police station, City Hall itself, the 2 parking lots on the East 2nd Avenue. We are not behind the ball on having conversations about what those could be used for and the potential benefit to the community. So I felt a little bit, sort of like you were telling us what we already know, and that made me a little bit uncomfortable, so I just wanted you to know that. We're a lot more on top of it than that sounded. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about has absolutely nothing to do specifically with that building. It has to do with the fire contract. And I'm really concerned because I think that the fire district, and not the fire department, because you're not a fire department, you're the fire district. I think you guys are heroes in our community, and I think you've done a great job of providing services. I don't know at any case in which there's ever been a situation where you didn't come through the top, making it work. So I really appreciate that. And I value the safety that you provide to the community. But one of the things I'm concerned about with the contract, the city council and the city staff have started looking at all of our long-term contracts with our service providers. And you are a service provider. And we've also been analyzing in-house services that we provide. So I'll give you a couple of examples. We are currently reviewing Visit Durango's contract. We're doing an RFP to make sure that there isn't a more efficient, more effective, better way to manage tourism marketing for our community and to the benefit of our community. We'll also be doing an analysis on recycling and trash that we provide in-house. Is this a better deal for us to take out of house and have an outside contractor handle for us? What is the best use of taxpayer dollars in order to provide those services? So your contract is currently up December 31st, 2028, which at this point is 7 years from now. And I would like to see us work on this as partners, because I want to talk to you about the idea of building on economies of scale, for example. One of the things that I will be requesting that staff does is do an analysis of can the city provide with their own fire department as effective and efficient services as the fire district can provide us. Currently, we're paying more than $5 million a year. In addition to that, in your contract time, there's $4 million that the city is paying in bits and pieces on an annual basis toward the construction of this new fire station. So we are a significant contributor to the dollars that your fire district earns. The other interesting thing about the contract is that because the city is actually not a member of the fire district, and we contract with you, not a single one of our 19,000 residents gets to vote for your board of directors. And so the city itself, the residents, don't have the kind of representation for this size of an organization and for the dollars that we contribute to it, that I would like to see. So I would like to say that you're absolutely right about economies of scale. And when the city does an evaluation of whether or not a fire district within the city would be the best thing to do, one of the things that we'll be looking at is the fact that we already have human resources. That shows up on your organizational chart. We already have administration. That shows up on your organizational chart. We have finance. That shows up on your organizational chart. We have fleet mechanics. That shows up on your organizational chart. And oftentimes when you bring something in-house, and you can talk to a lot of businesses about consolidating, the benefit to doing so can be as much as 10 to 20%. And on a $5 million contract, that could be $1 million a year that we might be able to save, possibly. And this is all speculation, but it's something that it's in everyone's best interest for us to review this contract. And in a couple of years from now, when you're occupying a new building, you may only have 2 or 3 years left on that contract, and you're going to spend $14 million to $17 million. And I think that it's probably a good idea for you to be talking now to the city about a contract, because it may turn out, and I don't have, I have no numbers at this point, but it may turn out that in this evaluation, having the city have their own fire department is a more efficient and effective use of taxpayer dollars, and then you would be left with a building or whatever you choose to do, and you would have put $14 to $17 million into it. So I really think that it's our fiduciary responsibility as city councilors to review these contracts that we have and to make sure that we're on the right track. And I think that we should do it in partnership with you. So we need to look at reevaluation. We need to look at in-house versus outsourcing of everything. We need to look at core services. And you are one of the core services. And to put, to go back to what you said about economies of scale, when the city does do this evaluation, one of the things that we would also do is evaluate whether or not combining in a same building, not obviously the same services, the police department and the fire department. And maybe for us, that even gives us even greater economies of scale. So I'm just trying to take this up a higher level than just what does this building do, and talk about how do we, I think your board and you would benefit from a long-term contract that was based upon us doing a reevaluation and an assessment of whether or not we should bring the fire department in-house. Because if that assessment turns out that we should, then that might change what you do with what you're doing. And if it turns out that we shouldn't, then that'll give you the capability of having a long-term contract to support the link with all the dollars that you're spending. So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I have no preference in this. What my preference is that the taxpayer dollars are spent wisely and efficiently. And so my preference is that we do the right thing, evaluate the contract, evaluate the idea of doing that within our own organization, and see how it turns out. So
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a great idea. I can tell you that, that in one of the recent editorials, the point about the city not having representation on the board was brought up, and I think that that's a really, really valid point. And the way that the funding scheme works now for the contract is just associated with the simple premise that the assessed value of the city is going to be multiplied by our mill rate, and that's the amount of money that it costs. The $4.1 million in the contract that you referred to that you're paying to us over a period of time, that was the front end deal. That was so that the city was coming to the table with an equivalent amount of funding to the capital influx that the organization got from Animus and got from Hermosa Cliffs. So it certainly would be left to the attorneys, not to me, but I would say that regardless of how the contract deal goes, that's money that's a. But I think that you're absolutely right in the fact that the city would be better served in being able to be a part of the district so that you could be represented on the district board.
Well, I don't know that that's the answer. And that would take a vote of the public, which was turned down back in 2013.
Twice.
Yeah. So that would take a vote of the public. And I think there might be some more creative ways to help with that concept of it. So I do want to say that about half of the money that we pay every year, the city pays every year to the fire department, comes through property taxes. And about half of it comes through sales tax out of the general fund. And if it turned out that we had a more efficient, effective way of providing fire services through our own fire department, then that would leave the general fund with maybe some extra dollars to put into other safety services like like police protection, or even some of the other areas that we're trying to work into in mental health and that combination. So I'm glad to hear that you would support this idea of having that kind of a detailed analysis of what.
Yeah, I'd love to take part in helping you look at that.
Absolutely. We have a lot of work to do between our boards, between the board and the council, absolutely. It's all for the best interest of our community, and I think we're all on the same page, absolutely.
Mayor, I could. I think it's interesting that you say that about having a seat on the fire board. And in fact, I can't tell you how many businesses in this community that own property here, pay taxes, and never have a chance to vote in the city, anything.
So that is a state law, just so you know, that you must vote where you live. Now, I also want to speak to that because that was brought up by another person. And the fact that because you own a business in the city and you're on the board, that's great. But the residents of the city do not have the opportunity to vote for you. So if they felt that you represent their interests, fabulous. But what if right now they felt you didn't? They have no way of having their voice be heard. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm speaking for those 19,000 people that don't get to say, I don't like that conversation.
I probably am speaking about the same amount.
Yeah, and that's what the city elects you to do.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm saying I represent probably another 19,000 in the county that are not allowed to be involved in that, whether it's a law or not.
No, I'm sorry. So the people that are in the county get to vote for you as a fire district board member. So there are no people in the county that do not get to vote for you as a fire district board
And I'm
member.
not talking about the fire board, I'm talking about the city.
What the city does, we don't.
People in the county can't vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and we don't get to influence what the county does. That's not the conversation here.
The people in the city get to vote for the county commissioners.
Can I jump in real quick? So I think that when you brought up, it was by email, I think, that we don't meet, on a regular basis, like we do with 9R, we do with the county, and I think it's genius, and I think it's important. And I think conversations like this, whether we talk about the contract or we're talking about whatever, I'm not prepared to talk about their contract right now. I don't have the backing. I know it was 2014 maybe, I know some general stuff, but I was elected in March or April or whatever, and I've been cramming with stuff. I don't know all the ins and outs of the potential. I also know I'm not willing to sit here and say that you shouldn't build a new fire station because who knows if we'll use you or not, because there's been nothing. I have not had one email, not one bad thing ever said about the fire department. Our greatest asset is our downtown, and I want our fire station close to downtown to protect, like you said, our greatest asset is right there. So I think in the future, if we can schedule those quarterly meetings where we can have an agenda item set, let's talk about the contract. Okay, send me all the background of why the contract came up, and then I can sit there and look through everything. You know what I mean? That's the time to do that. It's not the time now where to throw, we're talking about the fire project right here, right now. Yeah. I think we're talking about, and I think that's what we should focus on. And again, trying to have that positive relationship and not I get, Jerry, you couldn't vote if I was going to be a city councilor or not, and you might hate that I'm there. And I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying, I get you had no say. I get you, Matt, you had no say either. But guess what? Here we are. Yeah. And we're going to try to make the best out of it. And I think that is where I would really, really, really like to see us. I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about all these things, absolutely, but let's do it when we're all ready. And not so confrontationally.
Well, so we actually consolidated 5 boards to create this district.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex history that we have, and Matt and I can speak to that and some of the other board members.
We did ask to have some of these
good work
on the agenda.
Yeah.
And we were told we couldn't.
Right, because we wanted to talk about the new station.
I understand, but
so let's put that on the next agenda.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think also Mayor Pro Tem knows where they
I was going to say something, and Jessica, you covered a good portion of it. I do, first of all, thank you for recognizing that we have a fiduciary responsibility to evaluate all contracts. And in the end, to be able to explain it to the public, absolutely, the decisions that are made. And I do see the value of, after having done the analysis, the potential benefit of a longer contract is there. And I don't have a view, it's just do the analysis. But I also think that the scheduling of meetings, and I think it's important when we meet with the county, and sometimes we meet more frequently over topics, it's a real mutual agenda setting of that. What are we going to be covering? and a real work session. So I do look forward to digging in as appropriate to the analysis of the workload and things like that, and where some economies of scale between the city and the fire district could be achieved. I guess what I was hoping to get is, what do you see as next steps regarding the 9R building? And then also, Kathy, I've already heard you and the mayor talk about the need for regular communication and nuclear agendas. But I did want to see what's the next step coming out
So
here.
from the standpoint of the 9R building, we as I said, we're under contract for that building, and we are moving forward because that's the process. It's stalled right now based on the subdivision of Buckley Park off of that contiguous property. And when that goes through, then my understanding is that you all will own Buckley Park. And then we have the opportunity with that subdivision done to finally close on that real estate deal. We're under contract now. Both parties have signed it. It's at the title company. The title work is done, being done, and our earnest money has been paid. So we believe that our next steps are to start with going down the road of all the requirements that we'll have for the major site review. And so we understand that developing what the use of the site will look like is the first priority, and meeting those requirements. Several of them are very hefty requirements, like a traffic study and some other things like that. Other ones are simpler to get to. And then we would move forward with having our architect design what the actual facility, the remodel of the historic building and the rebuild, and how parts of the big picture school would continue to be used, and come up with the building plans and go through that planning process. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask, I just wanted to stop you just there, to the Councilor Youssef's question, in that design, how, I guess I want to remind you of the robust civic community engagement around that.
Yes.
I wasn't hearing that, so.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to be mindful of everyone's time, and for me to tell you the whole story, you guys know it takes 24 hours or more. So, but I am on board with that. I want to be engaging the public. I got to speak at the chamber chat and the Jack Balon's radio show on the radio. I'm trying to get in front of every group of people that I can. I've been recently invited to the Kiwanis Club to speak at the Kiwanis Club. I would like to speak at the Durango Forum. I want the opportunity to be able to engage and talk to as many people as I can about what our vision is here. Interestingly, as we move forward, one of the really big hinge pins in this process is going to be trying to figure out what the process might look like to have the city council decide about your willingness to partner with us in bringing the police department in, because I don't want to design the building absent your police chief and your facilities folks, because that would do a disservice to your police department if we were going to do that. Similarly, if that's not the eventuality for the use of that property, then I need to design it to be something else. And so we would be looking to you as our city council to make a determination about whether or not that was a worthwhile thing, and you could share the vision and see the value in that or not. I think that that's going to be a really critical point of decision, and it was why we prioritized getting together with you now the way that we did, so that we give you the time it will take to be able to work to that decision.
A couple of points here. So, taxpayers' money, I think I have the same concern. If we go the route discussing contracts and everything new, or spending staff time on evaluating a different fire service setup, I think we should first have that discussion at the council level. And we've not had that, so I think that's something that was suggested, and we can see if there's a majority of council to move that topic forward.
So Olivia, if I may respond to that, I did ask you for a study session, and I did ask you for an executive session, and you all said you didn't want to talk about it.
So I guess there's no support for that topic.
But, okay, if you're not interested in openness and transparency, that's great. So, thank you.
The police department topic that you mentioned, I think that's another example. In my opinion, we should definitely have that discussion, but that would be something that someone has to support it, and then we have the majority of our council, so it becomes an item on the agenda. And then on splitting of the Buckley Park and the 9R building, we have two professional people here. Maybe you guys can give a short update if you have the availability on that.
Yeah. As far as the Buckley Park minor subdivision, we did receive a complete application survey, application fee and narrative is what we require. And just this morning, I completed the notice. We post the property, we send notice to neighbors within 300 feet of the property, and we put a notice in the Herald. So that's all going out, and it's scheduled for the September 27th Planning Commission meeting. Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council. So the council public hearing would be the second meeting in October for a final decision on the minor subdivision.
Excuse me, Scott. So how was the response? Were there complaints about the city owning Buckley Park?
No, and we haven't.
So noise is not a factor there.
In Buckley Park?
Yeah.
We don't own Buckley Park. We don't have an agreement to own Buckley Park at this time.
Right. But what I'm asking is, your intention is to buy it, and I'm just like we're intending to buy the administration building. Are you hearing the same kind of backlash about Buckley Park because of noise? You're 100 feet from where we're at. See what I'm saying?
I do, and I'm gonna look at her just because most of these discussions have been in executive session, so I can't really comment too much on the topic. So what I would say is I have not had any comments received, and that's probably also because we've been talking about it in executive session, so it hasn't been open for a discussion.
Historically, from a code enforcement standpoint, rarely has there been objections from the neighbors regarding the activities at Buckley Park, whether they're city functions or others. So that's kind of been the history on it.
So beside the clarity of the police department, what else can we do for you guys to, like at the council level and at the city level, to make sure that the community is heard, that we go in the right direction, and that all the concerns are addressed as much as possible, no matter which direction this takes?
Yeah, I would love to have access to your connections to help plug me into opportunities to speak with the public. I think that it's a really important thing. I think that I'm maybe missing one person in the room or two, but I've spoken with almost everybody who's here in attendance today, either individually as a part of the group that they're in or publicly about this. I would love to get the opportunity to be able to do more of that. You know, I love it when they get when the public asks me questions that they're concerned about, so that we can either tell them what we already know the answer is to that, or give us something to work on so that we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. We don't want to be bad neighbors, and I hope all of you that are going to be our neighbors here believe that. We want to fit into the community. These guys will bake you cookies, whatever it is that we need to do to make that connection. We want to be good neighbors, and what I've found across the course of us trying to work through this is that at the end of those community engagements, we may still not agree on this being or not being the best place for the fire department, but as Jessica very clearly said, there's nobody except for this group of people and that group of people that are ever going to think that the best and highest use for a property in downtown Durango is a fire station. right? So we're always gonna have stumbling blocks, and our battle is that in order to do our job, we have to have the community's trust, and that community trust comes from being transparent, speaking about what it is that we're trying to do, and being forthcoming with our finances. I think each of you has gotten one of these. If you haven't, I'd be glad to give you one tonight. We want you to understand how your fire department works. What's in the contract? Why can't somebody who lives in the city be on our board? We want to have dialogue about all those things, because through that dialogue, we can all get to the point where we're doing a better job and have better relationship and connection.
I don't think it's that someone who lives in the city can't be on your board. I don't think that's the case. I think it's that the citizens of the community can't vote for your board members. So someone who lives in the city.
No, I believe you have to live in the fire district in order to be on the board of directors.
So then it's both?
No.
Okay.
No.
You have to own property.
No, you have to own property.
Have to own property.
So there actually are probably a good number of people in the city that can vote in fire district elections if they own property in the county.
Right, exactly. So for me, my priority right now, I think, is to think about like the next step for us, meaning the board and the council, and the next work session. So Mayor, if you would, just send me some dates. Maybe in September, we can do that.
I'll have Jose manage
Jose?
that process. He's much better. We've got.
Yes, that would be great. So if we could schedule something in September, that'd be awesome. So we could just keep the momentum. We have lots to talk about.
September, I will tell you right now, is going to be,
Tough.
it's difficult.
It's
We've
difficult.
tried to get stuff in September unless something has monumentally changed with,
Okay.
there's some trainings and conferences and some
That's fine.
vacations going through, but if October
Okay.
would be a better, I think, date to shoot for.
Okay. Just let us know. That would be really great.
Something I wanted to just touch on really quickly, and I don't know if Kathy or you guys can back me up on this, but Mayor, when you were discussing, is the city better off? In 2014, we looked long and hard at how we were trying to set up the contract. And I'm really going off memory, so I'm a little bit out of place to say this, but just to give you some round numbers, the numbers we looked at, just the startup cost for the city to get a fire department in place was about $10 million. And if you take 66% of our budget now that we're spending servicing the city, you're looking at almost $10 million. So that number becomes pretty astronomical when I guess what I'm trying to get at is the way the contract is written, the city is getting a tremendous value. And I don't think, and I think as you guys try to vet through that, you'll see there's no way you can get anywhere close
And
to the value.
I'm not disputing that, and I don't doubt it.
But the whole reason I bring that up is I would not want to lose a bunch of time while you guys try to go back and reevaluate that and put us on hold. So.
I think they're two separate things.
I don't think we're putting you on hold about it. I think
Okay.
it's two separate.
I just wanted to
It's
kind of.
our fiduciary responsibility to review all of our contracts and to
Sure.
determine what the best choice is for us.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do that anyway, whether.
It's in our best interest, when somebody asks you that question, for you to know the answer to that.
Yeah.
To be able to say, it would cost us $30 million to get that.
Because I have to speak to the community, and I have to be able to say, yes, we've asked this question, we've done the analysis, and here's the best and highest use, and here is the best use of our money. It's just like anything that we're analyzing, any major capital project or any service contract.
I agree 100%.
So it's not, like I said in the beginning, it's not a reflection on the job you're doing, it's a reflection on the job I'm supposed to be doing.
It would also be interesting, like we're looking at library district versus having library in-house and like what they're able to leverage because you're a district, like what are you able to leverage? Like because you're a fire district versus being in-house to us, like what could we do if we housed it? Like, and so when we have that on the agenda and, a presentation by you guys showing us all the things you can do and a presentation by our, like just like we do in a regular meeting, our staff about like, the background and the costs that we're spending, like I'd love to know all that stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of history.
Yeah.
It'd be a great team building exercise for you.
Team
Right.
Great. So we'll wait for a letter from Jose to set a meeting for a work session. right?
I mean, email.
And, or email. Okay, that's fine.
It'll be an email with some dates and then I'll circle back and see which days work.
Yeah, and our agenda items will be this discussion, hopefully. some-
When you all are on board for a meeting with the county, is it the city manager and county manager that talk about what the issues are each of their boards want to bring to that? How do you facilitate making sure everyone's issues make it to the agenda?
So we ask each group for agenda items. And then, of course, we can't, if we have 300 agenda items, we can't discuss them all.
Right.
So we try to distill them down to the priorities and then have conversations about that. And then whatever doesn't get there goes to the next meeting, for example.
And for the county, we alternate running it, so like you run it one time, we'll run it one time. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all being willing to come here and talk about this with us tonight.
Yeah, we really appreciate it very much. It's been a long time. So let's not wait this long again. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 5:47. And thank you again.
Thanks, guys.